right. My guest is in the house. Everybody, welcome our esteemed PhD motherfucker.
Can you hear me okay, brother?
I got you. You're loud and clear.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Thank you, man.
And his time is short, so he's in here by my request. As a treat to you guys, he's going to uh, give us an overview of the. Oh yeah, they saying your article was on point about R. Kelly, so they're giving you kudos.
Oh, appreciate y'all checking it out. Thank you.
Yeah, he's gonna give us an overview about the origins of toxic masculinity, and what he said shocked me. I'm sure it's gonna surprise you guys. So without further ado, because he's a busy man, he's got kids to teach. He's got to make out his do his paperwork. So we're gonna take it away.
Oh, much appreciated, man. There's been so much going on about it that I'm glad brothers are on here having a discussion to clarify what it is. So I just wanted to drop in a couple of points so that we could be prepared and armed in these debates. The concept of toxic masculinity, which is very closely connected to hegemonic masculinity, actually comes out of the work of one particular scholar. The scholar's name is Raywin Connell, also referred to as R.W. Connell, sometimes R.W.S. Connell. Connell is Connell. And Connell is actually an Australian sociologist. And this is a trans woman. So this is an older white man. I think he made his transition into being a woman pretty late in life. But nonetheless, this is a gender scholar. And Connell's work was about hegemonic masculinity. And one of the things Connell argued was that hegemonic masculinity, as we understand it, is really not about being rude to women or being sexist or even sexual harassment. It's not about men being inherently dangerous. What it was really about was this notion of a hegemonic, dominating white masculinity, an oppressive masculinity, more so from a white supremacist kind of framework. So hegemonic masculinity and toxic masculinity was framed from that standpoint. But here's the kicker. Connell argued that not only black masculinities, but masculinities of the global South, right, men of what we generically call men of color, were inherently not toxic or hegemonic, because our masculinities were formulated in contrast to the power dynamics of white society. So basically, our masculinities are the masculinities to be looked toward to find liberation from hegemonic masculinity. So the irony of a Gillette commercial or even a surviving R. Kelly series, when those things are framed as a problem that, especially in regard to black men, that we're some kind of problem that needs to be addressed in regard to toxic masculinity. If you look to the author, the origin of the concept actually suggests that we are the contrast to toxic masculinity, that our masculinities are formed in contrast to the power dynamics of white society. And it's from that framework that we have to begin to take back the discussion, because what happened is you had intersectional feminists, black feminists in particular, who took this concept and just liberally applied it to black men across the board. Right. So it just became toxic in terms of any example of black men doing something they didn't like, including nothing at all. Right.
Wow. Yeah.
Because if you look at the McDonald's video, I wouldn't say he did nothing at all, but that's the way it's framed. And that's then framed as toxic. But you were one of the first and only people I heard call out the fact that not only did he try to pull the brother in the video tried to pull the sister back, but then he pulled the white man off her, even though the claims were that, black men did nothing. And then that was framed as toxic. But in reality, individual acts of even sexism that has nothing to do with the concept of toxic masculinity. So that's the kind of point I want brothers to be able to have access to, so that when you're in these debates, you can call people to the carpet, send them back to Connell, right? And there's a couple of pieces you could look at if you want to look at this further. Let me see, there's several, even going back to 87, that might be of use to you. And just remember, Connell is listed as Raywin Connell and R.W. Connell and R.W.S. Connell. So one of the first pieces is a piece called Gender and Power, Society, the Person, and Sexual Politics. Another in 95 is called Masculinities. And there's an updated book in 2005 with the same title, Masculinities, from Raywin Connell. You can also look at Margin Becoming Center, and another piece, another essay called Hegemonic Masculinity, Rethinking the Concept.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's in all of these places that Connell basically makes the argument. But Connell is very particular to point out that Black masculinities are not a part of the framework that, she's talking about.
In fact, when I was reading The End of Men and the Richer Sex, those two feminists that are actually second wave feminists point out that Black men, or the Black masculinity as it exists, whether we like it or not, in the Black community, is the ideal masculinity because it is more egalitarian in nature.
Mm-hmm.
So they were saying that Black men are actually the ideal version of masculinity.
Right. And in many ways, we frame the template for a contrary masculinity to an oppressive dynamic. Right?
The old standard white patriarchy, as they put it, right?
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So it's interesting to see a concept that people either misread or really didn't read at all. They just took the term and applied it, and liberally painted Black men with that brush. Another piece to check out is my boy Tommy Curry's piece, Killing Boogeymen, and he goes into great detail on the concept. And if you haven't checked out his book, The Man Not, he definitely deals with it there. But brothers, we're trying to deal with it, but folks don't really want to deal with the origins of concepts. They want to deal with what sounds good. They want to deal with what they can misapply, and they want to take advantage of the fact that people don't often know where these concepts come from, especially when they themselves don't bother to look it up. So
how did it go from, say, the original where Connell actually coined the term and actually explained it to the Gillette commercial that we just saw a week ago?
Well, it's mainly through intersectional feminism, right? So intersectional feminism concept or intersectionality is a popular concept in the late 80s that comes about. It's through there that Black feminism becomes the framework for it. But the concept itself kind of gets used in a million different ways from Sunday. And it really kind of gets taken out of proportion in many ways. But that's where it comes in, because Connell is kind of being read by intersectional feminists like what's this cat's name? Cooper. Cooper's one cat that uses it in particular. And Cooper kind of popularizes it. Frank Rudy Cooper in a piece called Against Bipolar Black Masculinity. He begins to popularize it. And so then you have, kind of what I would consider armchair intersectional feminists taking it from there. And so the concept of hegemonic or toxic masculinity becomes kind of, off the hip, kind of term that people don't even really cite. It's just accepted as a given truth, And when you look at the legacy of how Black men have been framed and perceived, really going back to slavery, it's not a huge leap for people to take this concept and somehow make it synonymous with Black men.
Yeah, I was wondering how did it go? How did white feminists go from making Black men toxically masculine?
They didn't. The Black feminists did.
Black feminists did. And how did white women get to adopt this? What I can understand Black feminists, they do it all the time. They actually flip terms. Black people flip terms all the time. But how did white feminists get to adopt this?
Taking it out of Michael Kimmel, popular feminist, and Frank Rudy Cooper. They're kind of taking it from that standpoint, and they're kind of using it very liberally. And I think when you have a term like that, it's really open to misunderstanding. You know what I mean? If you just take a term like toxic masculinity, you think you know what it means just hearing the surface of it.
Right.
It seems like it lends its meaning to you just in the term and the title that it used. The concept seems to lend itself to that, but it actually isn't. It runs contrary to that. So you have to look into it, and you can immediately tell who's cited it, who's actually read the origins of it based on how they use it.
Okay.
And that's really what I wanted to do, is just kind of arm brothers with some information so you can actually, read. Who knows? You can read the people talking to you and using it. You know what I mean? And you can actually ask them if you know, if they got it, if they understood it, but you can really already hear it in the way they use it. And if they're talking to black men, or they're talking about individual situations where they think somebody's being sexist, then that's not what the concept refers to. It's an overarching masculinity that's rooted in a legacy of white oppression, and that frames other masculinities in contrast to it, right? And makes them subject to white masculinity. So that's where the concept comes from. Now you can agree with it or not agree with it, but that's the way Connell wrote it. It didn't have anything to do with us.
Yeah, because I'm seeing all these discussion groups where sometimes even little boys, where you have these white feminist psychologists saying that regular, normal, rough and tumble boy behavior is toxic.
Nah, and that is how they're misusing it, and it is a misuse, right? And I think your audience, if anything, you know, understand this more implicitly than most. The same, you know, energy that you're labeling toxic when boys are roughhousing, that's the same energy you're calling on when you're walking down an alley and you're about to get mugged and you want someone to protect you.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing about that is even as black men, we live in a society where you're expected to give your life even for women you don't even know. You know, even strange way you know, it's a social expectation that as a man, you chivalrously risk your life to protect even strange women you don't know.
Yeah.
And with that in place, how are you going to ask men to be that protective, but then mislabel their behavior as inherently toxic when it's really the same dynamic? The boys that are roughhousing are learning to challenge someone else and get over fear. I mean, that's really one of the things we as men, when we socialize boys, when we put them through various rites of passage, one of the biggest, most consistent things we do is socialize them beyond their own fear. And then from there, we usually train them to sacrifice for family, sacrifice for others, particularly women, right? Those are the dynamics. So when you inherently turn that process into something negative and then turn around and wonder why it's not being, you know, applied to your benefit, you're shooting yourself in the foot.
Yeah, because I know lately what has been around for at least 7 or 8 years that I've noticed it, where the intersectional feminists are they're constantly talking about redefining masculinity, redefining what it is to be a man. And actually them, instead of partnering with men and saying what do men want as far as masculinity, they want to frame it, they want to shape it.
Right. Without addressing us at all.
Without addressing us all. And now the white feminists are picking up the same thing about redefining masculinity without addressing white men. And I've noticed in my research, where I actually posted this, where there have been second wave feminists that actually they have become what I call alpha females that either can't find or won't accept what I call the beta males or the supportive males, because they don't find them masculine. And so now what I find out is that the normal, what we call alpha male or normal regular masculinity, is being labeled toxic, and the non-toxic masculinity are what we call the supportive male.
Males they can control.
Males that, well, yeah, basically the non-breadwinning male that would stay home, take care of the kids, take care of the house, and not complain. And basically would play the emotional supportive role to the alpha female that the second and even third wave feminists want to promote. In other words, the lean-in crowd. The lean-in crowd is not working is because if they want a family, there's no supportive man at home that actually be there with the children. And in fact, a couple of feminists that actually said this: there's nobody at home, and somebody needs to be at home because they can't be Superwoman without having Clark Kent at home, for lack of a better term. So, and what she said out of her own mouth, that they have to redefine what masculine actually is. And I think this is one of those steps.
Well, it's interesting. How are you going to have that discussion without actually engaging men, particularly non-feminist men, who are bringing the discussion to the table that needs to be had? But you're going to completely alienate those men to have that discussion. It's already problematic. But if you go back to Connell, one of the things Connell says that's interesting is that white women in particular can engage and use toxic masculinity to their own benefit. you
Mm.
know, and can embody it themselves. So
Wow. Okay.
it's not even just about men. It's also about, you know, employing this concept, you know, yourself. And so when you really begin to look at this concept, it's really not the same type of indictment against men as it's being used for now.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And that's one of the things we have to be able to challenge, and then go further. And I don't think we need to limit ourselves to this, you know, vocabulary, but it does help to know where it comes from. It does help to know how it's being used against you in ways that are problematic and inherently, you know, destructive.
Mm-hmm. While you're here, what did you think of the Gillette commercial?
Uh, I mean, it was a broad stroke that really misunderstands men, and I think that was my first thought when I watched it. It
Mm-hmm.
amazed me, first, that it could make it to the air, but that it
Mm-hmm.
could make it to the air with such a profound misunderstanding of men. You know, by the time you see all of these men standing at their barbecues watching two boys fight, like
Yeah.
this kind of idea that men don't care, all of that was ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous. But again, it just highlighted that. And I posted a response, not a response on my behalf, but a response by a feminist critic
Mm-hmm.
who did a short video where, you know, she kind of talked about the profound misunderstanding uh, of men in general.
Mm-hmm.
And I posted it on my Facebook page earlier today. And I think it was called the Gillette ad is feminist pornography.
Mm.
And it's yeah, it's an interesting piece if you get a chance to check it out. It's only about 4 minutes long, and the name of the scholar talking escapes me at the moment. I think they kind of give her some kind of name like No Joke Janice or some mess,
Uh,
but it's Janice Fiamengo. That's what it is.
okay.
University of Ottawa. But she makes an interesting kind of critique. It's only about 4 minutes long, but she breaks down basically, you know, how this is basically feminist propaganda, feminist pornography, and it really has nothing to do with men. It's a power grab where men
Mm.
just become fodder for the grab itself, for women's, you know, feminist political advancement.
Yeah.
Uh,
The thing is, it was actually a feminist writer and director that actually wrote the commercial for this thing. It wasn't a male
mhm,
that actually wrote it.
absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, it's a profound misstep if you're actually trying to sell men a product and then at the same time demonstrating that you have no understanding of them whatsoever. That's going to be a real problem as far as I can see. But
Are they trying to sell men products, or are they trying to sell women products?
well, yeah, they've
I'd be
definitely
curious.
shifted that dynamic. They definitely have. But at the end of the day, I think it's going to end up being a problem because I'm hearing from a number of corners, you
Mm-hmm.
know, men protesting Gillette in that regard. But I don't think it's wholly different from surviving R. Kelly in the Black community, because I think what ended up happening is you see the same pattern, right? Where
Mm-hmm.
you take a critique of one male or at
Mm-hmm.
least a couple, and you liberally apply it to all males, right?
Yeah.
The problem isn't so much R. Kelly. The problem is how R. Kelly became the face of Black men, the same way Bill Cosby did, the same way at a certain point Nate Parker did, right?
Mm-hmm.
It, rather than these men actually representing less than 1% of you know, Black men engaging in this type of behavior and any type of sexual predation, the
Yeah.
percentages are so low, it's ridiculous. But somehow you know, you could take 5 celebrities in the past decade and they become the face of Black men, but millions of Black men every day are raising kids, are going to work, are figuring out ways to sacrifice for family. All of that becomes invisible in the face of one man. And I pointed out in the article I wrote the
Mm-hmm.
slick ways they go about it, right? Within the first few minutes of the first episode of Surviving R. Kelly, you know, Nelson George pops up on there and he says, well, yeah, you know, R. Kelly's, you know, what's the album title with Aaliyah, Age Ain't Nothing But a Number.
Right.
He said, I heard that in a barbershop. And I'm like, wait a minute. So because you say you heard it in a barbershop, that somehow becomes an anthem for Black men? You don't have to provide any citation. You don't have to. What barbershop? When? And what does that? And how did you determine that however many men were sitting in there chanting this somehow reflects Black men as a whole?
And basically, the first time I heard "age ain't nothing but a number," It wasn't from R. Kelly. It was actually older than that. It's actually a woman actually saying age ain't nothing but a number.
Mm. Interesting.
In
And
fact, there was actually I'm trying to think of her name because she was actually she's actually a famous songwriter. She actually was she's Canadian. And actually wrote a song called "Think It Over," and she was actually trying to woo an older man in his 40s because she was like underage. She was like 17, 16 or 17. And she said, in the term, she said, ages minds attract each other. And said, learn from love and not from number. In other words, that was well before R. Kelly ever came. So this is a very old thing, and
but
it's normal. And it's normally women saying that to an older man.
But notice how quickly and easily, just like with toxic masculinity, it takes hold. And people have no problem with attribute. I mean, for the most part, I think the average person, if they're even thinking about this, would consider R. Kelly the originator of the concept. Just because. And that's the part that I'm trying to draw attention to. Notice how easily this became a black male issue, but nobody even asked how many black males are engaged in this kind of behavior. You know what I mean? How exactly do we make the leap from one individual or even 5 celebrities and make it about black men as a whole? And there's no other group that you see dealing with it like this.
No, because as Angry Man says, as Valdez says, black men are sin eaters for America.
Yeah.
We're sin eaters for America, and basically we are the usual suspect. And anything said about a black man is believed, like that horrible article that black men are the white people of black people.
Right.
Anybody even dive at least an inch below the surface will know that's not true. It couldn't be true.
Right. But it even if you know, I don't even want to give that dude any play, but the trippy thing about even reading that piece, again, no data, no citations, ham-handed stories, just quick references about somebody he saw, and that's all it took. Yeah. And people were willing to run, and it goes viral. And yet at no point was there any evidence offered. I think at one point he was even talking about the big piece of chicken, and I'm like, Jesus, really?
Yeah, it was a joke.
That's all you need. That's all right. You can tell a few jokes and make some brash statements with no citations, and somehow that's taken as truth.
Yeah, we get sympathy because we get shot by police more than anybody else. I said, come on, man.
That's ridiculous.
It was ridiculous.
And others can take our deaths and use them to prop up their own agendas far more than even we do.
Yeah.
And so but all of that is really what I want to challenge people to do. When you hear that kind of thing, just be like, where's the citation? Where you get that from? Really? A barbershop? Word? Okay.
Yeah. Really, for it to go viral, all it has to do is say the black man did it. You didn't protect us. Even the viral thing about these pimps actually trying to recruit what they eventually said was a street prostitute, but it was actually framed as if these men were harassing and actually practicing toxic masculinity by these pimps harassing this chick at a gas station in the middle of the night.
Oh man!
And how come the black men, don't get with these guys and have these guys change and clean up our neighborhood, which is normally how it's framed.
And correct them and right.
Yeah.
But what we don't want to talk about is the social expectation is still that men be the pursuers, men be the ones to initiate the conversation. And if somebody doesn't do it to your satisfaction, you got all kinds of statements and critiques about that. But the social pressure behind that, I mean, you think about that. You actually have to come up with something she's never heard of before, a perfect stranger you've never seen. And somehow, if you don't do it to her satisfaction, you're inherently providing some kind of a problematic representation of masculinity. And this is all ridiculous.
How do you handle this kind of Me Too and this kind of crap on campus where it's basically that's like ground zero for this kind of thought and expectation and how do you handle that, man?
You mean aside from leaving my office door open all the time?
Besides with that, besides that.
Man, I'm supposed to move back in with my mama because you don't. No, I'm just playing. No, I mean, I think what I really try and push my students to do is to demand evidence, to challenge and ask questions. You know what I mean? I think I may have mentioned this before, but you know, we had a feminist come to campus a couple years ago, and she gave a presentation on black male privilege, and her evidence was a picture of Snoop Dogg with a leash around a woman's neck.
Oh, that thing, yeah.
And a statement about black men eating a big piece of chicken at dinner.
That's
She literally, as a scholar on an academic campus, gave that presentation, and it was probably about 150 black women in the audience, and they gave her a standing ovation.
Wow.
No evidence, no citations. And there was another point. She said that black women were the only ones that struggled with hair discrimination. And I ended up writing a short piece on my blog contrasting that, showing that black men have been the ones to levy lawsuits in regard to hair discrimination, you know, and it goes even further than just hair. For us, it goes into beards, growing beards, and black men losing their jobs because they couldn't shave every day. Not everybody could do that based on
especially in the military. They actually had to file lawsuits because of the razor bumps that was caused by them excessive shaving.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And those are the kind of things that I want people to challenge, because she had the audacity to get up there and say those things. And she knew nobody was really going to challenge her. Everybody was going to accept what she was saying as truth. And that's the kind of thing I want people to do. You got to raise questions and challenge where those things come from. Because to be honest, even I didn't know what you're talking about in terms of the skin issue in regard to shaving. There's a term for it.
Yeah, I can't remember the term.
PFB, folliculitis barbies.
Yeah.
PFB. But I didn't even know that was a thing, and these go back to lawsuits, you know, levied in the 70s. You know,
I remember a lot of the military men coming out of the military actually talked about that, how it was a big problem, and how the white officers actually insisted that they shave, and they would have to come out with these horrible skin rashes and skin bumps.
Yeah, police officers as well.
Yeah,
you know. But these are what we're seeing, though, and what we have been seeing, especially since the 1980s, is a very specific branch of black feminists who are willing to use even misdirection, misinformation, misapplying concepts to paint black men as monsters at their own advancement. And I think in doing that, what they're courting is really an idea, a certain type of white femininity, a certain alignment that they're trying to act out, that, you know, in framing black men negatively, advances them into this imagined space of being, you know, feminine and oppressed, because that's the narrative, right? That not just that black men are monsters, it's that black men are monsters to black women.
Yes.
And because they're monsters to black women are more like other women, particularly white women, and need protection from the state. I mean, they need the state to protect them from black men.
From black men.
And this becomes a very kind of political argument in that way. And most of us don't really gauge how far this argument is going, you know. So we see in R. Kelly, you know, 6-part documentary, and then there's one coming out on Michael Jackson in April, I believe. You know what I mean? And we see these, and much of the time, most of the brothers I run into, you know, they know something is there, but we often don't know how to put our finger on it. So sometimes what we end up doing is even trying to protect the individual, you know, celebrity in question, which isn't inherently bad, because sometimes there's misinformation being used against them. But I think beyond the celebrity, you know, I think black men sense that this is bigger than this person. You're just using them for a purpose that we don't always know how to put our finger on. And so that's, you know, so I just want to, you know, kind of arm people with information, and, you know, hope that you can use it to raise new questions.
No, but basically, you know, you've answered the question about toxic masculinity and where it came from, because nobody could give us an answer. Nobody that we could find could give us an answer. I said, I got experts. Let me use my expert, because this is your field. And you know, sure enough, guess what? You knew the answer.
Well, I appreciate the platform, the opportunity to put that out there, because you know, this is still a relatively recent thing, man. You know, our fathers, our grandfathers, they didn't have a platform where black men could compare notes and dialogue back and forth, and really begin to build a consensus about what it is we're experiencing.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm lit to see my brothers coming together to do that. So
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, like I said, well, we can make the noise, but the thing is, it takes scholars like you to validate us and actually say when we're on the right path. So kudos, because you're the Manosphere scholar. so
right.
you're always held in the highest esteem every place you go. So I know you got to get back to your work, and I know we had limited time. So
Well,
I'm gonna let
definitely. And I want to just thank everybody in the chat for the support. I appreciate it.
Put your while you're here, type your Twitter and your Facebook into the chat so people can actually link up and fight, because we got what 300 people watching. So type your Twitter and your Facebook, because you're active on Twitter and Facebook more than you are on YouTube.
True.
And I want people to follow you, because every day you drop 2 or 3, sometimes 2, 3, 4 articles and things we need to know a day, and a lot of people are missing that. So type your information, your links into the chat so we can find you.
Okay, I will. I'm working on that. I'm feeling real old.
Yeah. Basically, copy the link and paste it, because you got a wrench, so you can copy and paste.
Oh, so I just copy. Okay.
You should copy your URL and paste it into your Twitter and your Facebook into the chat box, because you got a wrench. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, your buddy, your fellow PhD Universal Jones is in the house, I do believe.
Universal Jones. Oh
yeah, he's a psychologist, a psychologist, Universal Jones in Minnesota. So you probably need to link up with him, because
you will.
Yeah.
I definitely will. What's up, man? Salute to you too, bro.
Yeah. So you need to link up with him, because you guys are our scholars, and basically when you guys say something, everybody listens. So when we don't make a use of enough of our experts as we should. So I'm glad are you a psychologist? Okay, he's a psychologist. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Tight.
Yeah. I think a are you a child psychologist, Universal Jones? Oh, he said you connected on Facebook already. All right.
Okay.
Very good. Very good.
All right. Well,
drop him a note, Universal Jones, and let him know on Facebook, and let him know so you can be aware of you. Because I like my scholars to actually keep in contact, because you have stuff that he needs and he has stuff that you need, and that's how it works.
Absolutely. We definitely got to hit this up like a brotherhood. So we got to do this on some Justice League Avengers stuff. I'm with it. So, thanks a lot, people, and much appreciation to you, BGS. I really.
All right. Oh man. Anytime I can get you, man, it's like manna from heaven. So because I know you're busy, and our times don't always sync up, man. And trust and believe, man, they ask about you all the time.
Oh well, I appreciate it. So I look forward to popping in, and I'm a fan, man. So I'm checking as many videos as possible, brother. So you've been dropping it lately, and that last piece was cold. Oh man.
Oh well, with the black with sister. Oh man, that was fire. I mean, that was.
I had to put the phone down and walk away on that. you didn't even leave it open for interpretation. That was just hers.
She dropped the mic on. I think she stepped on it too after she finished. And she actually commented in the comment section that what I put up was actually accurate. That's what she meant. So
wow.
Yeah.
Well, much appreciated, brother. You have a good evening.
All right.
Much love to the chat.
All right, you get back to work, man. So I know you got a busy night. So we'll check you later. Thanks for stopping in, bro. Peace. All right. Now be sure to hit up Dr. Johnson on his Twitter. Follow him on Twitter and Facebook. Because like I said, he drops at least 3 or 4 links every day on different things. So he's not as active on YouTube, but on Facebook and Twitter, he's always there. So that's the best place to find him, keep up with him. So Now, um, now that my guest is clarify some things, because that was the biggest question about toxic masculinity, and what was it and what was it about? I know I have my interpretations, but the thing is, when you don't know something, basically you go to the source, go to the scholar, because that is his wheelhouse. And I think he said something about toxic masculinity that's not known by people outside academia.